MoCapLab in Stockholm.
Let's meet Toni Arndt.
4 big eyes turned up in regards to your biomechanical philosophy.
A bit of a philosophy and some ideas. I have inspiration. I've mentioned already some of the supervisors I've had. Innovation based on methodology from already my PhD time. Use the methods that are available, but move them. We've been into this one a bit already. Internationalization, go international, work with other institutions, other laboratories, other cultures. Integrity, research ethics are part of this question.
And then there's an ongoing project right next door. Can we have a look at it?
Yeah, and looking at the kinematics or the biomechanics of the knee, and in particular, very quick movement towards them. They have to try and catch it with their leg.
Welcome to a new episode of MoCapLab Talk. Today from Stockholm in Sweden. We're having a very special VIP guest today. He is a professor in sports science, specializing in biomechanics at the Swedish School of Sport and Health Sciences. He's the ISB president-elect, and he's an exceptional researcher in the major fields of musculoskeletal and sports biomechanics. Toni Arndt.
Thank you. Wow, what an introduction. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Nice to be part of it. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Toni, Niels and I arrived in Stockholm yesterday, and we had some time to look around the city, and it's for sure a beautiful city to live in. But you've not always been living in Stockholm. You've been born in Melbourne, and it's almost 16,000 kilometers between Melbourne and Stockholm. We looked that up. Can you tell us about your journey?
Sure. I didn't know it was 16,000 kilometers. That's a pretty good ride.
We measured it.
Sure. Yes, I was born in Melbourne, so I'm Australian. But pretty soon we moved to New Zealand, and I actually grew up in New Zealand. And it's close, but it's not the same country. So I did all my school in New Zealand. The family was there for 13 years. So I also did my Bachelor of Science at Auckland University, and that was in biology. I majored in zoology, and my particular interest was actually New Zealand birds. So slight difference to what I'm doing nowadays, but I mean, that's still studying the body of an animal, so it was maybe some similarities there. After that, I was very interested in skiing, so I went to Kitzbühel in Austria for 2 years and was a ski instructor there, not doing any academics whatsoever, and had a fantastic time. However, I felt like I would like to go back to university and carry on studying, and by that time my parents had moved back to Australia. They were in Wollongong then, so I moved to Wollongong and did my master's at the University of Wollongong. And with my interest in skiing, my master's topic was actually the three-dimensional kinematics of mogul skiing. And like I've learned with a lot of master students, you try something that's far too ambitious and not necessarily possible, but all credit to my supervisors, Julie Steele and Peter Milburn, who put up with me, and we decided that we would go down to the mountains. We went to Thredbo, which is about a 6-hour drive, with some old-fashioned film cameras, low-cam cameras, only 3 of them, which is not very many to do three-dimensional kinematics of a complex movement. And all the calibration equipment, and set it up on the mogul field in Thredbo, and did some data collection on, it was actually the Australian mogul skiing team that we managed to get a few of them skiing down the moguls. I managed to get a master's thesis out of it. Realized there's some limitations to the methodology, but obviously it's an education you're supposed to have, and it really was an education. It was fantastic fun. At the end of that, I got a German scholarship. It's called DAAD, Deutsche Akademische Austauschdienst, to do my PhD in Cologne, at the German Sports University in Cologne, which from Australia I hadn't necessarily heard much about, but realize obviously now that it's one of the biggest ones in the world. Had the honor of having Professor Peter Bruggemann as my supervisor there, and spent 5 years doing my PhD on the biomechanics, the loading of the Achilles tendon there. While in Kitzbühel, while I was skiing, I also met my wife-to-be, Anna, and she had already followed me to Wollongong for a couple of years, and then 5 years to Germany, and I decided it's pretty much my time to follow her for a change. So after that we came to Sweden. She's from Stockholm, and have basically been here since. I got a postdoc at the Karolinska Institute under the supervision of Arne Lundberg. So did my postdoc there. Had a brief time back in Germany. I got what sounded like a very attractive job at a private rehabilitation clinic in southern Germany, where I was in charge of the biomechanics laboratory. But after, it was a bit more than a year that we were there, we wanted to go back to Sweden. So moved back to Stockholm, and I've been here since, so beginning of the century. So in total, I ended up 15 years at Karolinska Institute at the Department of Orthopedic Surgery in Huddinge, one of the campuses here. And then for the last 5 years or so, I've had the professorship here at the Swedish School of Sport and Health Sciences. So I've gone a little bit from more orthopedic, medical biomechanics to more sports, obviously, oriented biomechanics, which often is quite similar. It's just on different people. So yeah, now I'm here in beautiful Stockholm.
It's been a journey, so
it has been.
It's amazing. It feels a bit like that there is no limit for you. So the sky is the limit. You can, when you talk about it, it doesn't even, borders don't even exist, and it's really amazing. It inspires me. It's fascinating. What did drive you? What was your motivation to travel across the globe and work here and there? And
I think it's almost the other way around. I think it's fun and attractive and easy to do. I would have needed a motivation to stay in the same place, I think. I can also blame my parents a bit. From when we were young, me and my sisters, the family has traveled a lot, and I think it was always obvious that the children would end up traveling around as well. At some stage, the whole family was spread out over the whole world. And I've never really seen it as a big step to go to a different country or a different university or meet different new people, and have just enjoyed it so much, and I think it's just been very valuable. So I don't think it's not something I've needed motivation for. It's just something that I've thought was attractive and a nice thing to do.
And even summer and winter and snow and beach didn't make any difference to you. So you did your master thesis on, we have it here, by the way. Here it is. So you did your master thesis on skiing on the beach. So you didn't do it on the beach, but you were writing the thesis on skiing on the beach. No, skiing in the mountains while sitting on the beach.
Pretty much, yeah. But I mean, and what you mentioned is just the experiences you can look back upon. I mean, I've been in all these different climates, but also been a lot in the snow and been on beaches, and it's just experiences that you can look back and say, wow, that was fun. That's something I'm proud and happy that I've done.
Before we focus on your research, a few words on this nice white bike here in the background with the Swedish flag. What is it all about?
Well, it's pretty dirty. I ride quite a bit. I'm not sure if I can purely call myself a cyclist, but I specialize in long distances. So the shortest actual organized official rides that I do are 200 kilometers. And the bike you see here, that I rode the Sverige Tempot, it's called. It's from the very, very north of Sweden to the very, very south of Sweden. And Sweden's quite a big country, which you don't always think about. So it's over 2,000 kilometers to ride the distance. And the bike that's here is, I actually rode the last time on and broke the record for this 2,000 kilometer ride. And the reason why it's got the Swedish flag on is because the manufacturer of it thought it was a pretty good thing to do after I'd broken the record. So he
so you're holding
custom painted it for me.
Yeah. That's cool. You're holding the record for driving Sweden top to bottom over 2,000 kilometers.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, how long did it take you?
It took 104 hours and 53 minutes. So just over 4 days. It's great. You see the whole country in 4 days.
Without staying in a hotel and sleeping?
No hotel. You have to sleep a bit. So I was with 2 others, and we slept a total of 5 hours afterwards.
Again, you're pushing boundaries here.
In that case, yes. And that's why it fascinates me, and I think it's really exciting to do. It's really pushing physical and mental boundaries to just keep riding and riding and riding.
Any races coming up in the next in the near future?
We try not to call them races because officially they're not races. But maybe the biggest ride in this field is Paris-Brest-Paris. It's not the longest. It's 1,200 kilometers, but it's definitely the biggest participation. There's over 6,000 people, I think, expected this year. It only goes every 4 years, and this year is one of them. So it's in August, and I'll be riding with a bunch of other Swedes. So, and that's a great ride because all the towns that you ride through is to party.
Yeah.
So it's fun going down there. So
All the best.
that's my goal at the moment. Yeah.
All the best for that.
Thanks.
Keep my fingers crossed.
Thanks.
When we were preparing for this interview, 4 big I's turned up in regards to your biomechanical philosophy. Can you explain that a bit in detail?
Yep. I'm prepared. This is something I've been thinking about and also talking to some people about. It's a bit of a philosophy and some ideas I have now that I'm not exactly young career anymore. I've had a few years. Some of the things that have kept me going the whole time in biomechanics, which I think is a fantastic field to work in, but I think can also be used as a philosophy, as a way of thinking for academics in general, but in particular young people to be inspired to get into biomechanics, to do academics, and to make the most of it. Inspiration is the first one. I've mentioned already some of the supervisors I've had. They're all different, and I've been fantastically inspired by all of them in different ways, but it's always pushed me on to carry on doing biomechanics, and in different ways just thinking that it's such a fascinating field to be in. I'd especially like to mention Peter Brüggemann again, who was my PhD supervisor. He was himself unbelievably inspiring and energetic in the biomechanics that he did. And what he had the great capability of was networking, and at that stage there were a few really big gurus in the field of biomechanics. For example, Pavel Kormi, Ben Onig, Ton van den Bogert, Peter Kavanagh. And through Peter Brüggemann, I, in my PhD years, already got to work with these people. And that was just fantastic. They were just the biggest you could imagine to work with. And of course, that's inspirational. I say that they were the big gurus, and I think biomechanics was, as an international field, still quite young then. And it was a bit easier for a few people to be really well seen and really form the field of biomechanics. And these were just some of the people that did that. I think now there are so many more biomechanists that are all fantastic and competent and inspiring as well, but it's harder to get this position that's really a bit special that these gentlemen had. But like I said, I've just been inspired by so many people, and I think it's important that you see that it's an inspirational field, there's inspirational people, and make the most of it. Innovation. I think this is mainly based on methodology. From already my PhD time, I've been fascinated by not just the standard biomechanical laboratory setup where you have a motion analysis system, you have force plates, you have EMG and maybe a few other measurement systems, but they're pretty similar wherever you go around the world. And we've actually had discussions here whether that is really what a biomechanics laboratory should look like. Shouldn't everyone have their own interests and from that decide what they should be in a laboratory rather than having a laboratory and then forming their opinions based on that? And so I've, not necessarily consciously, but from the start of my biomechanics career, already in my PhD, I've been inspired by methods that are a bit out of the box.